for last night. Last night we tried to begin broad, and then today we want to start narrowing it down. John, I think I'm okay now. I think we're good. We began broad, biblically, in the text, talking about parenting and talking about then some of the challenges that come our way, parenting in this brand new context. As I said yesterday, in all of human history, nobody else has had to consider, when do I buy my child their first mobile phone? Is 13 an appropriate time to allow my children to jump onto Facebook? Those sorts of questions. When do I let my child get an Instagram account? What is Snapchat all about? So yeah, we've always had different parenting challenges, every age, every generation, but ours are certainly unique. And so it bears some time then. It's wise for us to spend some time thinking biblically about these matters. What I want to do today first is to talk about technology. What is technology? What is God's relationship to technology? What is our relationship to technology meant to be? How does it function in human society? How does it function in families? And then next time, in our second session today, we'll get really brass tacks, talk about how we as families can integrate it into our lives, into our homes, into our families, and then we'll have a Q&A to clean up any questions that may remain at the end of it all. So first I want to talk about the next story. And what I mean is that I want to talk about life in this world, this Facebook, email, cell phone, computer, iPad, iPhone type of world. But even more than that, I want to talk about living as Christians in this world. Not just living in this world, but living specifically as Christians, living as Jesus told us to live, but in a very, very different time, in a very, very different place than Jesus lived, than the epistles were written, and so on. In the last 2,000 years, the world has been transformed and transformed again and again. And usually those transformations occur on the back of great technological changes. And today, here at the beginning of the 21st century, we're in one of these new transformations. We're right at the edge. We're just at the leading edge here of this new transformation, a digital transformation. And it's one that affects each one of us in some ways in the same way, and other times in different ways, depending on our circumstances in life. Let's begin by asking, what's up? I want to start with some numbers. I think numbers are just some statistics, are a good way of orienting ourselves a little bit. We'll look at some now, and then in our second session, we'll look at some more. I think it's a helpful way of just understanding some of the ways in which the world has changed. We'll start with this number, 7:38. That's 7 hours and 38 minutes. Maybe you can think for a second about what that could possibly represent. 7 hours, 38 minutes. That represents daily screen time today for children between the ages of 8 and 18. So the average amount of time children today spend in the presence of a screen, 7 hours, 38 minutes. Now, okay, that's a lot. Sometimes that's combined screen time. If you've seen your kids doing what they do, chances are there's sometimes 2 or 3 screens in front of them at once. Like, one isn't enough, right? You got to watch TV while sending text messages, and then over here you got Facebook scrolling. So that's the combined time from all of that. Why is that significant? We don't have to back up that far in human history to find a time where average daily screen time was 0 hours and 0 minutes, right? So in a very short period of time, in just about 70 years, we've gone from no daily screen time to 7 hours and 38 minutes on average of screen time. That's got to do something, right? I mean, we can't go from living this way to living that way in such radically different ways and it not affect us at all. And in case you're feeling cocky about that, average daily screen time for adults is higher, and highest of all is senior citizens. So by the time you're a senior citizen, your average daily screen time tends to be well above 8 to 9 hours a day, though it changes, less mobile phone and more television. Another number for you, 3,364. 3,364. Think about what that represents. That represents the average number of text messages teenagers send and receive in a given month. Again, you think about the fact that 10, 12 years ago, that number was 0. The average teenager was sending 0 text messages a month. Today they're receiving 3,364 messages. That's got to do something, right? I mean, that's got to change us somehow. If we have this new form of communication come along, at one time it was people communicated in other ways, now 3,364 messages a month. That's got to be changing us in some way, right? It's clearly a different world. How about this number, 70%? This is a number, you see these little arrows are going up. This means all these numbers are increasing year by year. 70% is the amount of pornography today that's consumed on mobile devices. So if you think back maybe 10 years or 12 years or 15 years, when people really started to realize the internet is conveying pornography, the internet has brought this plague of pornography into our homes. Think back then, that meant that personal computer, there may have been just one computer in each household, that computer was the conduit for pornography into our homes and into the lives, especially of our children, but also to many, many adults. Well, today, 70% of pornography is consumed on a mobile device. That means either a tablet or a phone. So we put a lot of effort as Christians, as parents, into protecting against that computer. You remember that early advice, right? Take the family computer, put it in the dining room, put it somewhere public where there's lots of traffic around. That will help protect your family. And then we gave everybody in the family this little mini screen, and naturally then pornography migrated from the big screen to the little screen, migrated from the public spaces into the private spaces. So as we've gotten better in protecting against one thing, the problem has merely shifted to another. Here's a number that's actually going down, number 11. 11, age 11, is the average age of first exposure to internet-based pornography today. It means the average child, the average boy, anyways, is first encountering electronic pornography through the internet at age 11. Just a couple of years ago, it was 12. That number continues to move in a downward trajectory. So you think about that. I mean, you don't have to put a ton of thought into that to realize this is a concerning thing. That children, before their bodies are prepared, before they're even starting to think in those directions, right? Before puberty, before they're old enough to really be thinking about things, already by age 11, they're encountering stuff online that's starting to form them, starting to form their understanding of sexuality. And I think we need to be, I'll try and be discreet here, but what they're seeing online is not good stuff, right? Most of what they're seeing is really base, vile, graphic, terrible. And so their minds, their understanding of sexuality from their youngest age is being formed by stuff that has no business ever being done by anyone ever. And yet they're understanding that now as normal, as a normal expression of human sexuality from the age 11. Okay, so the world has changed, right? I mean, these aren't new problems. These things have always been problems, the way people communicate, that people have seen pornography, that people have received false messaging about sexuality, but something's changed. It's a new world than it was even 2 generations ago. So what do we do about it? How do we respond? This world is changing, and all of these changes we've talked about have come on the back of technology, right? We've invented technologies, and then those technologies have changed us. Nobody invented the cell phone thinking that it would be used for text messaging, and yet that's what it's used for. Nobody invented the iPad or the iPhone thinking this is a great device for pornography, right? That's not why it was made, and yet that's how it's being used. Our technology changes, and it inevitably brings with it these kinds of problems. So how do we relate as Christians? How should we think about technology, and especially these new technologies that keep coming our way? Just think about some of the things that are coming our way today, right? We're moving into virtual reality now. That's kind of the next big wave. And beyond that, just new forms of devices, starting to narrow the distance between technology and biology, right? We're getting closer and closer to implantation of devices or, glasses, things that will stand between you and the world all the time. So you don't even have to look down at your screen anymore. Now there will be a screen between you and the world, right? So we're getting this tighter and tighter integration between ourselves and our technologies. There's a lot of change still to come. We haven't reached the end of this digital transformation. So as new things come along, how should we respond? Well, I'll give you 3 options. The first we might call enthusiastic embrace. That's just unthinking acceptance of whatever comes along. A new device comes out, we're the ones lining up outside the Apple Store to get it on day 1. A new software releases, new social media platform comes along, we're the ones who are right there in line to get on it first. Whatever it is, we just enthusiastically embrace it, thinking this must be, if this is new, it must be good. Second option would be something like strict separation. That might be kind of the Amish approach, right? If it's new, it must be bad. And so we're going to hold all those things at bay and assume that until it's really proven itself over a long period of time, we've got to hold it off. We've got to be careful there, though, because technologies bring us great opportunities, right? Sometimes, as churches, you think those churches that were very slow to embrace websites, and there's still some churches that don't have websites. That's baffling to me. 100% of the people who come to our church visit our website first. I'm glad our church got out there pretty quickly and created a website, and a good website that would advertise the church to people and help them feel comfortable visiting it, let them know about it. So we can't always strictly separate ourselves from technology. Therefore, the better option is disciplined discernment, using a well-trained Christian mind to think about these technologies, to think them through carefully, to understand what they're all about, to understand what they might do to us and do for us and do in us. It means we're accepting those things that are virtuous, we're rejecting those things that are dangerous. Ultimately, what we want is to not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of our minds. This is our lifelong battle, and we need it in this area of technology. We need mind renewal. We should be thinking better about technology than unbelievers do. Right? The way Christians relate to technology should be markedly different than the way unbelievers think about technology. And yet, sadly, I'm not really sure that's the case. I'm not sure Christians are leading the way here. There's a reason that young men in the church embrace pornography at the exact same rates as people outside the church. That's because neither they nor their parents were thinking particularly well about technology. They were introducing things into the family, into the home, that brought a great danger. We'll talk about that a little bit more as we go. Now, as we think about technology, there's something we need to keep in mind, and it's the digital divide. Right now in the world, we have 2 very different groups of people, and we can look at the year about 1980 as making a great divide in our society. 1980 was right about the time that the personal computer began to come into our homes, which means if you were born before 1980, you remember a world where there were not computers in your home. If you were born after 1980, chances are you don't remember that world. The only world you've known is a world where there are computers in the home all the time. If you were born after 2000 or so, you only remember a world where the internet existed and where people had mobile devices. So 1980, if you were born before that time, we might say you are a digital immigrant. You started in one world and you migrated into this world. If you were born after 1980, you're a digital native. This is the only world you've ever known. You've always lived in this kind of a digital world. That means there are 2 groups of people right now. They see the world differently. One group remembers a world where somehow we managed to get along just fine without the internet, and just fine without glowing rectangles in our pockets or purses all the time, right? We realized that we used catalog cards at libraries and stuff like that. You remember those big, long things you had? And we managed to live in that world. This other group, these digital natives, they've never known that world. Now, one of the tricks about technology is we tend to believe that the world as it is when we were born is the world as it has always been. So we are looking at the world very differently. Some who remember the pre-digital world and some who have only known it in its current form. That's important to remember. That's why grandparents think differently about technology than their grandchildren. Why mums and dads may think differently than their children do. All right, in our time together in this first session, I just want to bring you 2 big lessons that you can think about and apply about technology and humanity, technology, and Christians. I think if you can think about these and apply these in your life, you'll now be thinking differently about technology. The first is this: all technology is God's technology. What I mean is there's a distinctly Christian way to think about technology. The Bible helps us think well about technology. Again, you should be thinking differently than your unsaved neighbor, right? Because you get the mind of God. The Bible is that pair of glasses you put on, so now you see the world as God sees it. So through the Bible, you should be able to see technology in a different way. And to do that, you need to begin at the beginning, Genesis 1. God said, "Let us make man in our image according to our likeness." We're created in the image of God. Only we as Christians really believe that we're not just made by God, we're made in the image of God. What does that mean? It means a lot of things, but it means that we're social creatures, right? We're creatures who are made for fellowship, first with God and then with other people. Now just think about these new technologies that have come our way over the last few years. Think about the internet, and think about our iPhones, and think about our computers and social media. What are they for? Almost invariably, they're about socializing, right? We're created in the image of this social God and have this God who's always existed, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and in fellowship with one another. We have this deep need, this deep desire for fellowship, for socializing, for communication. So no wonder then that all our devices at some point seem to come down to communication. We're made in the image of a communicating God. We're made in God's image as social creatures, also as moral creatures, right? We have the ability to choose what's right or what's wrong. Animals don't do this. Animals aren't moral creatures in that way. I've got a dog. My dog doesn't ponder life and then ponder the rightness or the wrongness of her actions and then, defying God, choose what's wrong, right? Dogs don't do that, but humans do. We consider and we choose to honor God or to dishonor God because we're moral creatures. We're also created in God's image mentally. We are rational, thinking beings. We have the ability to reason in a way nothing else in all of creation does. You put it all together, we're created in the image of a creative God. Because we're made in the image of God, we have this creative desire and this creative ability. Again, animals don't create. Animals don't invent, right? They operate out of instinct. They might build a nest. They might learn to crack a nut open with a stone or something, but they don't invent. But we do, because we're created in the image of this creative God. We love creative outlets for that creativity God has given us. We act out of the image of God. Right, so God created us in his own image. And then he gave us a job description. God blessed them, humanity, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. Have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the air and over every living thing that moves on the earth." There's a two-part job description. God created us in his image, gave us a job to do in roughly two parts. First, procreation, populate the earth. Create families, create churches, create schools, create governments, create cities. God put us on this earth, two people in this little tiny spot on the earth, and he said, there's a big globe. I want you to fill that entire earth with people. The second part is dominion. Procreation, then dominion. So harness this natural world as you spread out over the entirety of the earth. Harness the natural world. Plant crops, build bridges, design computers, compose music. Use all the building blocks that I've given you and create. Harness them. It's interesting to think that at the end of the day, your iPhone is just taken out of the ground, right? It's just components that are taken from this earth. Nothing's actually created. We don't create ex nihilo like God did. We just take these building blocks that God's given us in the earth and we reassemble them in interesting forms and we end up with an iPhone, right? Harness this natural world. Have dominion over it. There's an upshot to that. We have a mandate to use our creativity. We have a mandate to invent new technologies. See, God hasn't just given us the ability to invent, the ability to create. He's told us that we must. If we are going to be obedient to God, we're going to carry out the mandate God's given us to spread over the earth and to harness the natural world, we must invent. Again, God created two people and they were naked with nothing in a garden, and he told them spread out over the whole earth. Well, if they were going to cross the river, they would need to build a bridge. They need to invent a bridge. If they were going to do that, they need to chop down trees, so they needed to invent a way of chopping down a tree, right? He gave them nothing but the ability to create, to invent. They're going to get to the far side of the ocean. They need to invent boats. On and on it goes. This means, in a fundamental way, technology is good. Technology is not only cell phones. It's not only computers. It's not only brand new things. Technology is anything that was after Adam and Eve were created, right? They had nothing. So in one sense, everything is technology. The wheel is technology. Writing is technology. The book is technology. We cannot obey God. We cannot fulfill our God-given mandate without technology. You think about the Great Commission, right? Go into all the earth, make disciples of all nations. We need technology to do that, right? If we were going to broadcast the good news, we need to invent radios and transmission towers so that news could go out to distant lands. And aren't you glad that that people created those technologies and Christians used them to further the reach of the gospel? So what is technology? Technology is the creative activity of using tools to shape God's creation for practical purposes. That's a big definition. Basically, it's this. Technology is making stuff that makes our lives better. Making stuff that makes, even better, other people's lives better. That makes us safer. That makes us more comfortable. That ultimately allows us to carry out our God-given mandate. That's what technology is. Creating things that allow us to do what God has called us to do in this world. All right, so let's consolidate for a minute here. God made us creative. Creative God created us to be creative in his image. And then he told us to go out and create as part of our job description. So shouldn't this be true, that technology only ever makes our lives better? Right? I mean, shouldn't that follow? We wish. But of course that's not the case because sin broke everything. Sin came as an intruder into this world and it destroyed everything. It shattered everything. And it's not like technology escaped the fall. Right? Technology too is subject to the fall. So now on the far side of Genesis 3, which describes mankind's fall into sin, we're left with this. Technology can be used to do great good. Technology can be used to do great evil. In fact, the very same device, the very same piece of technology, the very same piece of software can be used to do things that are very, very good and that further God's mission in this world. Or they can be used to do things that are very, very bad, that inhibit or destroy or disrupt God's mission in this world. And so we're left with a choice day by day and really moment by moment. How will I use this? Will I use Facebook to further God's mission in the world? Or will I use Facebook to honor him? Will I use Facebook to disrupt the mission in this world? Will I use it to dishonor him? Every time you pull your phone out of your pocket, right, you've got the choice. Will I use this for good purposes? Will I use this for evil purposes? Your iPhone isn't evil. You might think it is. Your iPhone isn't good either. It is. And the choice lies with you, the moral being, right? Your phone doesn't have morality attached to it, but you do. And so you're making that choice day by day and moment by moment. How will I use this thing? I want to show you something I think is so important. And again, as Christians, we get to think differently about these things. We are all worshipers, right? God created us to be worshipers. We can't help but worship. We can't help but attach our heart's loyalty to someone or something. We all worship. Now, because technology is so closely tied to our comfort, and we don't invent things that make us less comfortable. We don't integrate them into our lives, only things that make us more comfortable. Because technology is so closely tied to our survival, right? We tend not to create things or bring things into our homes that make us worse, but they make us better. They help us. Because of those things, it makes us comfortable. It helps us survive. It makes us wealthier. Technology is exactly the kind of thing we can turn into an idol. We can give it too much prominence in our lives. Let me show this to you. The natural human condition on this side of the fall, professing to be wise, they became fools. They changed the glory of the incorruptible God into an image made like corruptible man who exchanged the truth of God for the lie and worshiped and served the creature rather than the Creator. Left to ourselves, we will all worship what has been created rather than worshiping the Creator, right? It's our natural human condition. Our hearts chase after anything other than God. I love how Matt Papa, the musician, says it. He says, an idol, simply put, is anything that is more important to you than God. It is anything that has outweighed God in your life, anything that you love, trust, or obey more than God, anything that has replaced God as essential to your happiness. That can be different for each one of us, but each one of us has something or some things that draws our heart. John Calvin said, everything can be and everything has been. John Calvin said, we gather that man's nature, so to speak, as a perpetual factory of idols. Tim Keller summarizes, everything can be and everything has been an idol. Or we tend to think we're too sophisticated for idols, right? We're not going to bow down to a piece of wood or a piece of stone. But everything can be. Everything has been an idol. And that includes technology. Sometimes technology itself is what we worship. Now, I don't mean that we're bowing down to our iPhone, right? Not too many people are going to worship, pay homage to your iPhone. But what you can do is put a certain amount of hope, a certain amount of trust in technology. I'm going to show you an example. This is a long quote. I'm going to read it for you, and then I'll summarize it. So don't get too concerned if you can't follow it. But just listen to this quote from a journal about technology. Understanding the mind and brain will enable the creation of a new species of intelligent machine systems that can generate economic wealth on a scale hitherto unimaginable. Within a half century, intelligent machines might create the wealth needed to provide food, clothing, shelter, education, medical care, a clean environment, and physical and financial security for the entire world population. Intelligent machines may eventually generate the production capacity to support universal prosperity and financial security for all human beings. Thus, the technology, the engineering of mind, is much more than the pursuit of scientific curiosity. It is more even than a monumental technological challenge. It is an opportunity to eradicate poverty and usher in a golden age for all humankind. So, blah, blah, blah. Here's the important stuff. Universal prosperity and financial security, and the eradication of poverty, and the ushering in of a golden age for all humankind. I wonder if that reminds you of something. Does that sound familiar? It's heaven, right? He's described heaven there. But how do we achieve that heaven? How do we get to there? Is this anything about the return of Jesus Christ, putting your faith in Christ, Christ returning, us being caught up with Him, and the new heavens and the new earth? Nope. This is technology. If we just advance our technologies far enough, then technology will take away all of our problems. So who's our Savior? Technology, right? I mean, really, it's humanity because we're the ones who shape technology, but this person is looking to technology to save us, admitting all our problems, well, except the problem of the human heart, admitting all these problems and saying it's technology that will save us. So who is the God here? Where is the ultimate hope found? In technology, right? Now, I doubt for too many of us in this room that is really where our hope lies. I mean, it may at some times, right? When your child is 13 or whatever and really, really wants their first cell phone, their first iPhone, you can see that idolatry in their heart, right? They really think this device will bring them hope. It will bring them some great feeling. It will deliver something to them that they think they need, that you can see the idolatry. And maybe for you, it's when that new device comes out and your phone is 2 years old and you just hate that rotten old thing and you just need that new one, and it's got that grip on your heart. But I think for most of us, technology functions differently. Technology tends to be an enabler of existing idols in our lives. Technology has a way of magnifying, a way of enhancing the power of other idols in our lives. So here's what you need to think about. What do you love more than you love God? In those moments when you are not satisfied in God, right? In those moments where your heart is discontent, what is it that promises joy? What is it that promises fulfillment? What is it that holds out the promise of satisfaction? Right? Just think about it. Those moments where you are not delighting in God. You want something to satisfy you. What is it? For some people, it's money, right? If I just have more money, then I'll be satisfied. Power. If I just have power over those people, I get that position, if I get that prominence, then I'll be satisfied. A lot of people, it's sexuality, right? I need that person, and then I'll be satisfied. Or popularity or success, any of these things. These things can have this idolatrous hold on us. I'm not satisfied in God. This is the thing I need right now. So now let's think, if that's true for you, you just think about whatever that idol is in your life. How will technology play into it? We think about if it's sexuality. That's what holds out the promise of fulfillment. If I just have this, I'll feel fulfilled. Well, you take that perfectly good technology of the internet and that perfectly good technology of your computer or your cell phone, and what will you do with it? You'll use it to pursue that idol, right? You'll go and look at pornography, perhaps. Right? So your technology, these technologies that can be used for such good, are now enabling your idolatry. Conversely, when you really are satisfied in God, when you're finding your joy in Him, you can use those very same technologies and do such good with them. Right? Wherever your heart is oriented, your technologies will aid you. They'll assist you. Think about money. If money is what really has that grip on you, you think, if I just have more money, I'll be satisfied. Well, how will those good technologies of the internet and your laptop, what will they do for you in those moments where you can go online and you can gamble and try and increase your wealth in illegitimate ways? Right? Your technology will serve you as you pursue God or as you pursue your idols. We can use technology. If we're not very, very careful, again, moment by moment, day by day, we can use our technology to further the power of those idols in our lives. So no wonder then that we love our technology. No wonder then that it has such a hold on us. Because if we're truly delighting in God, our technology is used to further that. We use our technologies to delight in God, to call other people to Him, to help other people, to bless them. Or if we're pursuing our idols, we're pursuing things other than God, again, our technology is there to serve us. Technology just enhances the power of God in our lives in that way, or it enhances the power of idols in our lives. So, all technology is God's technology. This is a distinctly Christian way to think about technology. Nobody in all the world can think about technology through this lens of idolatry except us, which means only we get to see technology really clearly as a way we can serve God or a way we can serve our idols, a way we can honor God or dishonor God. Second thing, briefer, I want you to see about technology. There is always risk, and there is always there's always opportunity. The problem is, you're just not very good at seeing that, and neither am I. Every new technology brings with it risk, and it brings opportunity. It always brings something good. It always brings the risk of something bad as well. Now, sometimes this is pretty easy to see. Think about a technology like nuclear fission, right? It's pretty easy to see the benefit. You can use nuclear fission to power a city. The risk, you can use nuclear fission to destroy a city, right? So we can look at a technology like that, even as it was being invented, and we can look back at it now, we can say, we see great opportunity there. My city is largely powered by nuclear power. Wonderful. We're happy with that. We can also very clearly see the risk that comes with it, right? There's great opportunity, there's great risk, and it's pretty clear to see which is which. But sometimes it's a little bit harder to see. You're just using this thing. You're just using this device you picked up at Best Buy, and it's changing you. Just over time, day by day, slowly, it's changing you. The good and the bad just come out as you're using it. Think about something like television. Saying 70 years ago, 80 years ago, television really didn't exist, and suddenly it just exploded. And starting in the, the late 40s into the 50s, everyone was running out and getting a television and bringing it into their home. Well, television had some benefits, right? It gave us shared experiences as a culture. It moved information in new and helpful ways, made us aware of things. It allowed preachers to go on television and share the gospel that way. But television, over a longer stretch of time, changed us. It really destroyed our communities in many ways, right? People used to spend time outside the home. They used to be entertained communally outside the home. Television came along and people were entertained as families inside the home. And then as time went on, we started to get multiple televisions, so now people were entertained individually within the home, right? So we went from together, community entertainment, to families together, to individuals alone. This whole culture of, driving your car out of the garage in the morning and driving back and parking in the garage, never going out and seeing your neighbors. To a large degree, we owe that to television. It kept us in our homes. It gave us something to do in our homes where before we had to go outdoors. Of course, television changed our morals, right? You really can't even imagine the way we regard homosexuality today, the popularity, the way it's become accepted in our culture without television, without Will and Grace, shows like that really, they got us to laugh at sin. Once we laugh at sin, we're not far to embracing sin, right? Television changed our morals. And a little while ago, Toronto had I think it was about 2.5 days where the city went dark. There was a big problem somewhere in the States, and it affected us, and the power went out. Something interesting happened. People got home from work, and they, went inside, and they tried that, and the TV didn't go on. So nobody knew what to do, so everybody went outside, and they started to talk to people. They started to communicate with their neighbors. And there's actually this neighborhood in Toronto that has maintained that as a little holiday, like the day everybody turned their televisions off and actually met people. And now they do this neighborhood thing. Let's all turn off our TVs tonight and go outside and talk to one another. But that's what television did to us. Now, nobody saw that coming, right? Everybody just got a television, and over time we came to realize how it had changed us. It brought opportunities, it brought benefits, but it also brought risks. But here's the trick. We tend to believe that our new technologies are primarily beneficial. We are very, very good at seeing the benefit, seeing the opportunity in a new technology. We are very, very bad at seeing the risk. If we understand it through the lens of idolatry, that makes sense, right? Because we're using these devices, so often we're using these devices to further the power of our idols. So we'll blind ourselves to certain things in order to allow those technologies to do what we want them to do. So I wonder if you think back to when you first got your very first smartphone, if you ever imagined as you waited in line to pick it up, that at some time you'd be tempted to check your email in church. Or that you might be looking up pornography on it someday. People who signed up for Facebook, right? They saw lots of benefit. I'll be able to keep up with my kids. I'll be able to keep up with the church. But not a lot of people imagined, well, this might lead me to an old boyfriend, an old girlfriend, and we'll start to chat just casually, like, how you doing? It's been a long time. And now Facebook is cited in a very large percentage of divorce proceedings. Right? People saw the opportunity in Facebook. Hey, I'll be able to chat with friends. They didn't see the risk in Facebook. That's very consistent with the way we tend to look at technologies. That's true as individuals, true as families, it's true of churches. Why is that? Well, it's because the benefits of a technology are usually very immediately apparent. The risks usually take a long time to show up. I mean, the benefits are easy to see because they're written on the box in the store, right? They're in the commercials. We see all the benefits. But it's the risks that come out over time. We just use those things and the risks come out. You just think about in the 1980s, right? The personal computer came on the scene and parents were getting this messaging that these things are the future. These beige boxes are the future. You need to get one of these things in your home. If you don't, your kids will be left behind. This is the future. And so all the parents ran out and they bought a personal computer and they brought it into their home and they gave it to their kids and they said, figure this thing out. This thing's the future. And kids did. We loved them. You know, we could play like Centipede and Space Invaders and stuff, and it was amazing. And our parents weren't wrong. They were the future. We did have to learn how to use computers. Then the 90s came along, and suddenly it was the internet. It's not enough just to have a computer. You need to hook this computer up to the internet. This thing is a future. Like there's encyclopedias out there on the internet and email and stuff. Your kids have to get on this. So parents ran out and they signed up for America Online and they hooked it up, gave it to their kids and said, figure this thing out. This thing's the future. And an entire generation of young men got addicted to pornography. An entire generation got addicted to internet porn. I haven't found evidence of one person in all the earth who said, hold on a second. If we take all the young men in the world and hook them all up with screens and this communication device, what's going to happen? I mean, from our perspective now, it's absolutely obvious. Nothing could have happened except the outbreak of pornography, right? That's the only possible thing that could have happened in that situation. I don't think anyone saw it coming. I don't think there were any parents out there who were saying, I think we better hold off on this a little while because I'm not comfortable giving you a screen and a connection to all the other boys your age in the world. That's exactly what happened, though. And so we had an entire generation that became addicted to pornography because their parents didn't see it coming. Their parents didn't think carefully. They saw the benefit. Everyone was telling them about the benefit, but the parents did not see the risk. Same things happened over and over again. I mean, maybe not quite so starkly, but new technologies come along. As parents, we embrace it. As churches, we embrace it. And always, invariably, there are risks. Now, it doesn't mean we don't embrace them. It just means we need to be careful to examine, careful to look, careful to see what are those risks, to consider that, and then do our best to be aware of them and to fight against them. So today, this new generation of dads, we're looking at this thing very differently. New generation of moms, where as we give our kids devices, we're aware of what's out there, at least as it pertains to pornography. We're being very, very careful how and when we give our kids devices, how we teach and train them, which is what our whole next session is going to be about, right? Because we're aware of that, but it took one, even two generations of kids who had to deal with it before we came to that point. So, two things, then I'll wrap up. And again, lots of time for questions and answers lately at the end. First, there's a distinctly Christian way to think about technology. So we as Christians, we've got to be thinking about it differently. We've got to be thinking about God has made us to be creative. We need to use technologies to carry out God's will on earth. And you look at the history of evangelism, and in so many ways you can trace the great evangelism to great technological advances. You know, the very first going out of the gospel, the Romans invented this amazing road system so they could take their soldiers from one end of the empire to the other. What happened? Christians used those roads to spread missionaries, right? I mean, there was this amazing new technology that was used to spread the gospel. The printing press comes along in the 1500s. What happens? Reformation breaks out because of the abilities that were gained through that new technology. There would not have been Reformation without the printing press, which printed books, which mostly printed the Bible and got it out to the people. Right? Radio came along, and suddenly all across the world, people are building radio towers to broadcast the good news. Television, preachers sending the sermons out through television. Today we've got the internet as the great new communication technology, and we're seeing people take advantage. But there is that risk. Wherever there's a new technology, there is opportunity. We're very, very good at identifying. There's always risk as well. We're just pretty poor at seeing that. So in our next session in a few minutes, we'll talk about how we as families especially can think well about technology, and I'll give you some really, really clear steps to take with your family. Hopefully, we trust, mitigate some of the risks and enjoy all of the opportunities.